right, so this leads us to the inverse of a function. So we looked at sort of composites and one-to-one functions because your function needs to be one-to-one in order to have an inverse. So it kind of has to pass that condition. And you can check to see if functions are inverses to each other if you do the composition and you get a result of x. You go back to the beginning. So basically, functions are inverses of each other if for all values x, y, coordinate points that you can graph, the inverse has the complete opposite. You have yx. So to find an inverse of a function, you switch the x and y values. Okay? So to find an inverse, to a function, first of all, the function has to be one-to-one, right? And then you switch all the x's to y's and y's to x's. Okay, basically you're switching the domain and the range. So the domain becomes the range and the range becomes the domain. Okay, so basically everything is topsy-turvy. Okay, so in this example here, find the inverse, determine the domain and range of the inverse function. So first of all, you can see it's one-to-one because you have no repeated y values, so you can find the inverse. And the inverse is going to be 3, 0, 5, 1, 7, 2, and 9, 3. Okay, so all the points are switched around. X's become y's and y's become x's. Okay, so for the domain and range, the domain of the original was all the x values, which were 0, 1, 2, and 3. And the range were all the y values, which were 3, 5, 7, 9. For the inverse function, the domain and the range are switched. Okay, so this becomes the domain, 3, 5, 7, 9. And this becomes the range, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so what the inverse does, it basically reverses the process. So you had some input, so we have an input value, which we usually call x, and you put it in the function machine, and that gives you an output, the y value, right? For the inverse, you're trying to figure out the equation that if you plug this in, it will go through the inverse function and you get back to the beginning. So it's like, what did I need to do to this y in order to get back to the value that I plugged in? Okay?